A few years back, I found myself aboard a long flight from LA to Sydney. Being a tall man, I don't really fit well in economy class seats. My knees usually end up either really close or right up against the seat in front of me. It's a struggle that I have grown accustomed to, and usually the person in front of me is empathetic and doesn't recline their seat all the way. Unfortunately, on this particular flight, I was unlucky enough to have a passenger who didn't share the same empathy. As soon as the seatbelt sign was turned off, the man in front of me reclined his seat all the way back. I tried to move my knees to give him some space, but the seats were just too small. The man in front of me turned around and asked, "Do you mind letting me put my seat back?" I responded as politely as I could, "I'm not sure I physically can. I'll do my best to give you as much space as possible." The man wasn't happy with my answer and started pushing his seat back with all his might. The pressure on my knees was unbearable, and I asked him to stop. But he wouldn't listen. He said, "I'll stop when I can put my seat back." I realized that I couldn't reason with this man and decided to wait it out. But he didn't give up, and after 15 minutes of pushing against my knees, he called a flight attendant over and demanded a new seat. The flight attendant told him that there were no other available seats and that he would have to deal with it. But the man wasn't satisfied with that answer and demanded to speak to the pilot. The flight attendant went to the cockpit to speak to the pilot, leaving me alone with the angry man pushing against my knees. After a few minutes, the co-pilot came back and tried to explain to the man that there were no other seats available in coach. But the man wouldn't take no for an answer and continued to demand a seat that could recline. The co-pilot was clearly getting frustrated and finally gave in, saying, "Sir, would you like a business class seat?" The man stood up and muttered something under his breath, which sounded like, "About damn time." But the co-pilot quickly corrected him. "Sir, I wasn't talking to you. Please sit down." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The co-pilot turned to me and said, "How would you like a seat in business class?" I was shocked and relieved at the same time. I quickly grabbed my belongings and made my way to my new seat in business class. As I walked past the angry man, I couldn't help but smile to myself. It was the best flight ever, with free drinks, comfortable seats, and some sleep. Looking back on that flight, I realized that some people are just impossible to reason with. But sometimes, you just have to wait it out and hope for the best.
I started my career in the airline industry decades ago as a gate agent, and I can still remember my first encounter with a difficult passenger. It was the 90s, and as a gate agent, part of my job was to assign seats just before departure. I was working on a flight to Fort Lauderdale when an older man came up to my desk and immediately demanded that his seat be changed. "You need to change my seat. I'm not sitting in a middle seat. I want an aisle seat," the old man said, shoving his boarding pass in my face. "I'm sorry, sir, but we have a full flight today. Let me see if I can—" I started to say, but the old man cut me off. "I don't care. You need to change my seat to an aisle seat," he demanded, his voice rising. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my cool. "Certainly, sir. Let me see if I can—" I started to say again, but the old man interrupted me once more. "I don't care how you do it, just get me an aisle seat," he said, his face turning red with anger. I could feel my own frustration building, but I knew that arguing with the passenger wouldn't solve anything. So I took a deep breath and decided to try a different approach. "Certainly, sir," I said calmly. "Let me see what I can do to help you." The old man leaned against the counter, clearly expecting me to solve the problem for him. But I knew that there were no aisle seats left on the flight. So I paged a different passenger, hoping that he would be willing to switch seats with the old man. "Good afternoon, Mr. Smith," I said when he arrived at the desk. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but this gentleman here is requesting an aisle seat, and I see that you are seated in one. Would you mind if we upgraded you to first class so that this gentleman can have your seat?" Mr. Smith looked a little surprised, but he smiled and nodded. "Oh, sure, of course. Thank you, that's so kind of you." The old man was clearly flustered and outraged. But, I want the first-class seat, he protested. I sighed inwardly, wondering why some people had to be so difficult. I'm sorry, sir, but the first-class seat is a window seat. You specifically and repeatedly requested an aisle seat. Here is your boarding pass for your aisle seat. Have a pleasant flight. Next passenger, please. I handed the old man his new boarding pass and watched as he stormed off towards the gate. His seat had originally been in row 10, but I moved him to row 33, right next to a family with kids. I felt a little bit guilty about that, but I couldn't help feeling a sense of satisfaction as I watched him go. Maybe next time, he would think twice before treating airline staff like his personal servants.
Please like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Thank you.